GitHub is just a service that somebody decided to offer for keeping your Git repositories in the cloud. There are other services like it. There's Bitbucket. There's GitLab. I think there's one called Beanstalk. There's a bunch. But the feature that's built into Git for this is called remotes. So you can have a remote configured for your repository that will be another copy of the repository someplace else that you sync with yours. And GitHub is just a service that lets you host your remotes there for free if they're open source, or for money if they're private. So when we created our GitHub repository, we copied a couple of commands out of here. Do you remember that? We copied a couple commands and put them on the command line. The first of those was git remote add origin and then some URL, right? So on the right side of the dotted line here, you see remotes. So you can have any number of remotes. You don't have to have just one. Typically, if you have one, you will name it origin, but origin is just the name of the remote. So the command here is git remote add. You're adding a remote. You're adding basically another copy of the repository that you want to sync your copy with. So that's what that command's actually doing. That's telling it, this is a remote that I want to keep track of. And it adds that to your configuration file. So git remote add. The second one that we pasted in was git push -u origin master. Git push is the command to take the changes from your history and move it to a remote. The opposite is pull. If you have changes on the remote that are not in your local copy, you pull to get them there. So push and pull. You push to a remote, you pull from a remote. If, for example, you're working on two different computers, you might have a change that you've pushed up there that you haven't pulled down on your other machine. Or if you're working with other developers, of course, they'll push work that you don't have and you'll need to pull it. So those are the two commands that we copy and paste out of GitHub. The second one, this -u is short for --set upstream. That is exactly the same command. -u is considerably shorter. What that does is that says, from now on, I don't ever want to say origin master again. Just assume if I push from this branch, origin master is where I'm going. So origin is telling it which remote to push to. Master is telling it which branch on that remote you want to push to. And we haven't talked about branching, and we kind of won't really get into that into this class because we're going to be working off of master all the time. But you can have entire separate histories on the same project, which you may need to do for any number of reasons. If you're collaborating with other people, for example, you're probably going to do most of your work on a different branch and then just merge it back in with master at some point down the road. But that's what that command that we copied and pasted is all about. That's saying, okay, push it to my remote, push it to GitHub, and from now on, just assume I mean GitHub when I say git push. So from then on, you can just say git push, and it's going to sync it with GitHub. You don't have to tell it GitHub. It knows because you already told it once. So those are your remotes. GitHub is the remote that we're using, but you could always have others. For example, perhaps that's how you actually deploy your code to production. Maybe you just do that by pushing to some server, and then there's some script that automatically does the right thing when you do that. So questions about that? When I commit the next several times, I'm going to kind of emphasize these points. And it just so happens that there's Git support built right into Visual Studio Code. That makes this even easier. So we're going to start using that too. But I think it's worth at least seeing those commands, git add, git commit, git push, to know that that's what's going on. Questions? Yeah.
Which one's better to use, the GitHub GUI or just using terminal?
There's no better or worse there. It's whichever one is going to lead to you making fewer mistakes, I would say is best. I am sort of in the habit of using the command line, but then once I remind myself that the GUI is there, I use it a lot. GUIs are a lot easier when you start like picking and choosing what you're committing. When you're not committing all of your changes, when you're committing only specific files or even portions of a file, like you realize you made 20 changes to this file and you only want this one function, that's a pain in the neck to do from the command line. You can do it, but it's a pain in the neck. So in those cases, it's much, much easier to use the GUI. Also, sometimes when I'm browsing the history, like I don't have GitHub Desktop, but I have one called Tower, which actually costs money, which is why I don't necessarily tell you about it right off the bat, because GitHub Desktop is pretty good. But Git Tower is really cool. Oh, there's an all-new version. Okay, well, not right this second. I'm in the middle of class. Thank you. So here, you can browse the history really quickly. So I can see all my commits, and I can actually see in this really super easy interface exactly what was changed each time. So I can see these green lines. These are what I actually added in that commit. So this is an important point. When you go back and look through your history, you can't just see the name of that commit. You actually see exactly what changed. So I don't see all 3 files here. I only see the file that changed, and the lines that changed are highlighted. So super, super handy. So here I see this line was removed and this line was added. The red means it was removed. The green means it was added. And Tower, and you can do this in GitHub Desktop too, gives you a very easy view of that history. But also, that's on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub and you go to your list of commits, click on 2 commits here, which is, I haven't actually pushed, have I? So let's push. So now it went from my local history to my actual remote. Refresh. Now I have 5 commits. I click on 5 commits. I see them. I want to see what happened in update a fancy paragraph. So I click on that one, and I see right there on GitHub, okay, I added these 2 lines to my HTML, and I changed this line in my JavaScript. So again, this is how we look at your homework. So this is why it's really helpful to us if each piece of the homework is in a separate commit, because it's a little hard for us to see if we just see the finished product. For one thing, it's hard for us to see, did you actually attempt this on your own, or did you just copy what was done in class? Because we want to see that you at least tried. So if you never committed what you tried, then we can't see that. Or if you did do it on your own, but then you also updated it in class, if you didn't commit in between, we can't see your version, right? It's fine to copy what we do in class, but when you attempt it on your own, make sure that you're actually creating that checkpoint in your history so that we can go back and see what you tried. You dig? Did I answer your question? Was yours the last question, Daniel? That was so long ago, you didn't even remember it was your question. Okay, all right. Cool for now? Okay.